Johnny One-Eye by Damon Runyon. This cat I'm going to tell you about is a very small cat, and in fact it's only a few weeks old. Consequently, it is really nothing but an infant cat. To tell the truth, it's just a kitten. It's what they call a tortoiseshell, but to me it looks like the colours was put together by a committee. Its fur's all frowsed up, so is it a very miserable looking little kitten, to be sure. The day it crawled through a broken basement window into an old house in East 53rd Street over near 3rd Avenue in the city of Point Cooked, and goes from room to room saying meow meow in a low weak voice until it comes to a room at the head of the stairs on the second story where a guy by the name of Robo is sitting on the floor thinking of not much. One reason Robo is sitting on the floor is because there is nothing else to sit on, as this is an empty house that is all boarded up for years and there's no furniture, whatever in it. And another reason is that Robo has a 38 slug in his side and he really does not feel like doing much of anything but sitting. He is wearing a Collingwood cap and his overcoat is as it is in the wintertime and very cold, and he has an automatic Betsy on the floor beside him, and naturally is surprised quite some when the little kitten comes meowing into the room, and he picks up the Betsy and points it at the door in case anyone he does not wish to see is with the kitten. But when he observes that it's all alone, Robbo puts the Betsy down and speaks to the kitten as follows. "Hello, kitten," he says. Of course, the kitten does not say anything in reply except meow, but it walks right up to Robbo and climbs on his lap. Although the chances are, if it knows who Robbo is, it will hightail it out of there quicker than anyone can say scat. There is enough daylight coming through the chinks in the board over the windows for Robbo to see that the kitten's right eye is in bad shape, and in fact it is bulged half out of its head in a most distressing manner, and it is plain to be seen that the sight is gone from this eye. It's also plain to be seen that the injury happened recently, and Robbo gazes at the kitten a while and starts to laugh and says like this. "Well, cat," he says, "you seem to be scuffed up almost as much as I am. We make a fine pair of invalids here together. What is your name, cat?" Naturally, the kitten does not state its name, but only goes meow, and Robbo says, "All right, I'll call you Johnny, yeah?" He says, "Your tag is now Johnny One-Eye." Then he puts the kitten in under his overcoat, and pretty soon it gets warm and starts to purr. And Robbo says, "Johnny," he says, "I will say one thing for you, and that is you are plenty game to be able to sing when you are hurt as bad as you are. It is more than I could do." But Johnny only goes meow again and keeps on purring, and by it falls sound asleep under Robbo's coat, and Robbo is wishing the pain in his side will let up long enough for him to do the same. Well, I suppose you are saying to yourself, what is this Robbo doing in an old empty house with a slug in his side? So I will explain that the district attorney is responsible for this situation. It seems that the DA appears before the grand jury and tells it that Robbo is an extortion guy and a killer, and I do not know what all else, though some of these statements are without doubt a great injustice to Robbo, as up to the time the DA makes them, Robbo does not kill anybody of any consequence. He hasn't done that in years. It is true that at one period of his life he is considered a little wild, but this is in the 2020s when everybody else is too. And for 7 or 8 years he is all settled down and engaged in business organisation work, which is very respectable work indeed. He organises quite a number of businesses on the large scale and is doing very good for himself. He's living quietly in a big hotel all alone, as Robo is by no means a family guy, and he is highly spoken of by one and all when the DA starts poking his nose into his affairs, claiming that Robo has no right to be making money out of the businesses, even though Robo give these businesses plenty of first-class protection. In fact, the DA claims that Robo is nothing but a racket guy and a great knock to the community. And all this upsets Robo no little when it comes to his ears in a roundabout way. So he calls up his law books and requests legal advice on the subject. And law book says the best thing he can think of for Robo to do is to become as inconspicuous as possible right away, but to please not mention to anyone that he gives this advice. Law book says he understands the DA is requesting indictments and is likely to get them, and furthermore that he is rounding up certain parties that Robo is once associated with and trying to get them to remember incidents in Robo's early career that may not be entirely to his credit. Law book says he hears that one of these parties is a guy by the name of Cute Freddy, and that Freddy makes a deal with the DA to lay off him if he deals everything he knows about Robo. So under the circumstances, a long journey by Robo will be in the interest of everybody concerned. So Robo decides to go on a journey, but then he gets to thinking that maybe Freddy will remember a little matter that Robo long ago since dismisses from his mind and does not wish to have recalled again, which is the time he and Freddy do a job on a guy by the name of the Icelander in Troy years ago, and he drops around to Freddy's house to remind him to be sure not to remember this. But it seems that Freddy, who is an important guy in business organisation work himself, though in a different part of the city than Robo, mistakes the purpose of Robo's visit and starts to out with his rooty toot-toot in order to protect himself. It is necessary for Robo to take his Betsy and give Freddy a little tattooing. In fact, Robo practically crockets his monogram on Freddy's chest and leaves him exceptionally deceased. But as Robo is departing from the neighbourhood, who bobs up but a young guy by the name of Butsy Fagan, who works for Freddy as a chauffeur and one thing and another, and who is also said to be able to put a slug through a keyhole at 40 paces without touching the sides, though I suppose it will have to be a pretty good-sized keyhole. Anyway, he takes a long-distance crack at Robo as Robo is rounding a corner. But all Butsy can see of Robo at the moment is a little piece of his left side, and this is what Butsy hits, although no one knows it at the time, except of course Robo, who just keeps on departing. Now this incident causes quite a stir in police circles, and the DA is very indignant over losing a valuable witness, and when they are unable to locate Robo at once, a reward of 5,000 smackaroos is offered for information leading to his capture alive or dead, and some think they really mean dead. Indeed, it is publicly stated that it is not a good idea for anyone to take any chances with Robo, as he is known to be armed and is such a character as will be sure to resent being captured. But they do not explain that this is only because Robo knows the DA wishes to place him in the old rocking chair at Sing Sing, and that Robo is quite allergic to the idea. Anyway, the cops go looking for Robo in Broadmeadows and Dallas and every other place except where he is, which is right in Point. Cooked, mate, cooked. Wandering around town with the slug in his side, knocking at the doors of old friends requesting assistance. But all the old friends do for him is to slam the door in his face and forget they ever see him, as the DA is very tough on parties who assist guys he is looking for, claiming that this is something most illegal called harbouring fugitives. Besides, Robo is never any too popular at best with his old friends, as he always plays pretty much of a lone duke and takes the big end of everything for his. He cannot even consult a doctor about the slug in his side, as he knows that nowadays the first thing the doctor will do about a guy with a gunshot wound is to report him to the cops. Although Robo can remember when there is always a sure-footed doctor around who will consider it a privilege and a pleasure to treat him and keep his trap closed about it. But of course, this is in the good old days, and Robo can see they are gone forever. So he just does the best he can about the slug and goes on wandering here and there and around and about, and the blats keep printing his picture and saying, "Where is Robo?" Where he is some of the time, he's at Altona Doggy Beach trying to get some sleep. But of course, even the blats will consider it foolish to go looking for Robo there in such cold weather, as he is a guy who enjoys his comfort at all times. In fact, it is comfort that Robo misses more than anything, as the slug is commencing to cause him great pain, and naturally the pain turns Robo's thoughts to the author of same, and he remembers that he once hears someone say that Butsy lives over in East 53rd Street, where I be. So one night Robo decides to look Butsy up and causes him a little pain in return, as he is moseying through 53rd when he gets so weak he falls down on the sidewalk in front of the old office work store on Sinnott Street, and rolls down a short flight of steps that lead from the street level to a little railed-in areaway and ground floor or basement door near Where I Be station. And before he stops rolling, he brings up against the door itself and creaks open inwards as he bumps it. After he lays there a while, Robo can see that the cash converter's house is empty, and he crawls on inside. Then when he feels stronger, Robo makes his way upstairs because the basement is damp and mice keep trotting back and forth over him, and eventually winds up in the room where Johnny One Eye finds him the following afternoon. And the reason Robo settles down in this room is because it commands the stairs. Naturally, this is important to a guy in Robo's situation, though after he is sitting there for about 14 hours before Johnny comes along, he can see that he is not going to be much disturbed by traffic, but he considers it a very fine place indeed to remain planted until he is able to resume his search for Butsy. Well, after a while, Johnny One Eye wakes up and comes from under the coat and looks at Robo out of his good eye, and Robo waggles his fingers and Johnny plays with them, catching one finger in his front paws and biting it gently, and this pleases Robo no little, as he never before has any personal experience with a kitten. However, he remembers observing one when he is a boy down in Houston Street hoppers, so he takes a piece of paper out of his pocket and makes a little ball of it, rolls it along the floor, and Johnny bounces it after it very lively indeed. But Robo can see that the bad eye is getting worse, and finally he says to Johnny like this, "Johnny," he says, "I guess you must be suffering more than I am. I remember there are some pet shops over on Lexington Avenue near Sinnott Street where all the panel shops are in Where I Be, not far from here. When it gets good and dark, I'm going to take you out and see if we can find a cat croaker to do something about your eye." "Yes, Johnny," Robo says. "I will also get you something to eat. You must be starved." Johnny One-Eye says meow to this and keeps on playing with the paper ball. But soon it comes on dark outside and inside too. And in fact it is so dark inside that Robo cannot see his hand before him. Then he puts his Betsy in a side pocket of his overcoat and picks up Johnny and goes downstairs, feeling his way in the dark and easing along a step at a time until he gets to the basement door where Cash Converters is at Where I Be Station. Naturally, Robo does not wish to strike any matches because he's afraid someone outside may see the light and get nosy. By moving very slowly, Robo finally gets to Sinnott Street where all the panel shops are, and while he is going along he remembers the time he walked along Watton Street down to Cherry Avenue with 6 slugs in him and never feels as bad as he does now. He gets to thinking that maybe he's not the guy he used to be, which of course is very true, as Robo is now 40 odd years of age and is fat around the middle and getting bald. And he also does some thinking about what a pleasure it will be to him to find this Butsy and cause him the pain he is personally suffering. There are not many people in the street, and those that go hurrying along because it is so cold, and none of them pay any attention to Robo or Johnny One-Eye either. Even though Robo staggers a little now and then like a guy who is rummed up, although of course it is only weakness, the chances are he is also getting a little feverish and lightheaded because finally he stops a cop who is going along swinging his arms to keep warm and asks if he knows where there is a pet shop. And it is really most indiscreet of such a guy as Robo to be interviewing cops. But the cop just points up the street to Sinnott Street where all the panel shops are and goes on without looking twice at Robo. And Robo laughs and pokes Johnny with a finger and says, "No, Johnny One-Eye. The cop is not a dope for not recognising Robo, who can figure the hottest guy in Where I Be to be going along the street with a little cat in his arms. Can you, Johnny?" Johnny says meow, and pretty soon Robo comes to the pet shop the cop points out. Robo goes inside and says to the guy like this, "Are you a cat croaker?" Robo says, "Do you know what to do about a little cat that has a hurt eye?" "I am a kind of a vet," the guy says. "Then take the glom at Johnny One-Eye here and see what you can do for him." Then he hands Johnny over to the guy, and the guy looks at Johnny a while and says, "Mister," he says, "the best thing I can do for this cat is to put it out of its misery. You better let me give it something right now. It will just go to sleep and never know what happens." Well, at this, Robo grabs Johnny One-Eye out of the guy's hands and puts him under his coat and drops a duke on the Betsy in his pocket as if he is afraid the guy will take Johnny away from him again. And he says to the guy like this, "No, no, no," Robo says. "I cannot bear to think of such a thing. What about some kind of an operation? I remember they take a bum lamp out of Joe the goat at Bellevue one time and he's okay now." "Nothing will do your cat any good," the guy says. "It is a goner. It will start having fits pretty soon and die, sure. What is the idea of trying to save such a cat as this? It is no kind of a cat to begin with. It's just a cat. You can get 1,000,000 like it for a nickel." "No," Robo says. "This is not just a cat. This is Johnny One-Eye. He is my only friend in the world. He is the only living thing that ever comes pushing up against me warm and friendly, and trust me, my whole life I feel sorry for him." "Well, I feel sorry for him too," the guy says. "I always feel sorry for animals that get hurt and for people." "I do not feel sorry for people. I only feel sorry for Johnny One-Eye. Give me some kind of stuff that Johnny will eat." "Your cat wants milk. You can get some at the delicatessen store down at the corner, mister. You look sick yourself. Can I do anything for you?" But Robo only shakes his head and goes on out into Watton Street and
down to the 7-Eleven next to Tasman Moits,
where he buys a bottle of milk. And this transaction reminds him that he is very short in the moo department. In fact, he could only find a $5 note in his pockets, and he remembers that he has no way of getting any more when this runs out, which is a very sad predicament indeed for a guy who is accustomed to plenty of moo at all times. Then Robo returns to the old house and sits down on the floor again and gives Johnny One-Eye some of the milk in his Collingwood cap, as he neglects buying something for Johnny to drink out of. But Johnny offers no complaint. He laps up the milk and curls himself into a wad into Robbo's lap and purrs. Robbo takes a swig of the milk himself, but it makes him sick, for by this time Robbo is really far from being in the pink of condition. He not only has the pain in his side, but he has a heavy cold, which he probably catches from lying on the basement floor, or maybe sleeping in the park, and he is wheezing no little. He commences to worry that he may get too ill to continue looking for Butsy, as he can see that if it is not for Butsy, he will not be in this situation, suffering the way he is, but on a long journey to some place. He takes to going off into long stretches of a kind of stupor, and every time he comes out of one of these stupors, the first thing he does is to look around for Johnny One-Eye, and Johnny is always right there, either playing with the paper ball or purring in Robbo's lap. He is a great comfort to Robbo, but after a while Robbo notices that Johnny seems to be running out of zip, and he also noticed that he is running out of zip himself, especially when he discovers that he is no longer able to get to his feet. It is along in the late afternoon of the day following the night Robbo goes out of the house that he hears someone coming up the stairs, and naturally he picks up his Betsy and gets ready for action when he also hears a very small voice calling, "Kitty, kitty, kitty!" And he realises that the party that is coming can be nobody but a child. In fact, a minute later, a little pretty of maybe 6 years of age comes into the room all out of breath and says to Robbo like this, "How do you do?" she says. "Have you seen my kitty?" Then she spots Johnny One-Eye in Robbo's lap and runs over and sits down beside Robbo and takes Johnny in her arms, and at first Robbo is inclined to resent this and has a notion to give her a good boffing, but he is too weak to exert himself in such a manner. "Who are you?" Robbo says to the little pretty. "And," he says, "where do you live and how do you get in this house?" "Why, I am Elsie, and I live down the street, and I am looking everywhere for my kitty for 3 days, and the door is open downstairs, and I know Kitty likes to go indoors that are open, so I came to find her, and here she is." "I guess I forgot to close it last night," Robbo says. "I seem to be very forgetful lately." "What is your name? And why are you sitting on the floor in the cold, and where are all your chairs? Do you have any little girls like me, and do you love them dearly?" "No, by no means, not at all." "Well, I think you're a nice man for taking care of my kitty. Do you love Kitty?" "Look, his name is not Kitty. His name is Johnny One-Eye, because he only has one eye." "I call her Kitty, but Johnny One-Eye is a nice name too, and if you like it best, I will call her Johnny, and I'll leave her here with you to take care of always, and I will come to see her every day, you see. If I take Johnny home, Butsy will only kick her again." "Butsy?" Robbo says. "Do I hear you say Butsy? Is his other name Fagin?" "Why, yes. Do you know him?" "No, but I hear of him. What is he to you?" "He's my new daddy,
My other one and my best one is dead, and so my mama makes Butsy my new one. My mama says Butsy is her mistake. He is very mean. He kicks Johnny and hurts her eye and makes her run away. He kicks my mama too. Butsy kicks everybody and everything when he is mad, and he is always mad.
He is allowed to kick a little cat.
Yes, that is what Mr. O'Toole says he is for, kicking my mama, but my mama says not a nice word, and I'm never to say it out loud.
Who is Mr. O'Toole?
Robo asked.
He's the policeman. He lives across the street from us, and he is very nice to me. He says Butsy is the word you say just now, not only for kicking my mama, but for taking her money when she brings it home from work and spending it so she cannot buy me nice things to wear. But do you know what? My mama says someday Butsy is going far away, and then she will buy me lots of things and send me to school and make me a lady.
Then Elsie begins skipping around the room with Johnny One Eye in her arms and singing,
I'm going to be a lady, I'm going to be a lady.
Until Robbo has to tell her to pipe down because he is afraid somebody may hear her. And all the time Robbo is thinking of Butsy and regretting that he is unable to get on his pins and go out of the house.
Now I must go home, because this is a night Butsy comes in for his supper, and I have to be in bed before he gets there, so I will not bother him. Butsy does not like little girls. Butsy does not like little kittens. Butsy does not like little anythings. My mama is afraid of Butsy, and so am I. But I will leave Johnny here with you and come back tomorrow to see her.
Listen, Elsie,
Robbo says,
does Mr. O'Toole come home tonight to his house for his supper too?
Oh, yes. He comes home every night. Sometimes when there is a night Butsy is not coming in for his supper, my mama lets me go over to Mr. O'Toole's and I play with his dog, Marley. But you must never tell Butsy this, because he does not like Mr. O'Toole either. But this is a night Butsy is coming, and that is why Mama tells me to get in early.
Now Robbo takes an old letter out of his inside pocket and a pencil out of another pocket, and he scribbles a few lines on the envelope and stretches himself out on the floor and begins groaning. Oh, oh. And then he says to Elsie like this.
Look, Elsie, you're a smart little kid and you pay strict attention to what I'm going to say to you. Do not go to bed tonight until Butsy gets in. Then you tell him you come in this old house looking for your cat, and you hear someone groaning like I do just now in the room and at the head of the stairs, and that you find a guy whose name is Robo lying on the floor so sick he cannot move. Tell him the front door of the basement is open, but you must not tell him that Robo tells you to say these things. Do you understand?
Do you want him to come here? He'll kick Johnny again if he does.
He'll come here, but he will not kick Johnny. He'll come here or I am the worst guesser in the world. Tell him what I look like, Elsie. Maybe he will ask you if you can see a gun. Tell him you do not see one. You do not see a gun, do you, Elsie?
No, only the one in your hand when I come in, but you put it under your coat. Butsy has a gun, and Mr. O'Toole has a gun, but Butsy says I am never to tell anybody about this, or he will kick me the way he does my mama.
Well, you must not remember seeing mine either. It is a secret between you and me and Johnny One Eye. Now, if Butsy leaves the house to come and see me, as I'm pretty sure he will, you run over to Mr. O'Toole's house and give him this note. But do not tell Butsy or your mother either about the note. If Butsy does not leave, it is my hard luck, but you give the note to Mr. O'Toole anyway. Now tell me what you want to do, Elsie. so I can see if you have got everything correct.
I'm to go on home and wait for Butsy, and I'm to tell him Robo is lying on the floor of his dirty old house with a fat stomach and a big nose making noises, and that he is very sick, and the basement door is open, and there is no gun if he asks me. And when Butsy comes to see you, I'm to take this note to Mr. O'Toole, but Butsy and my mama are not to know. I have to know, and if Butsy does not leave, I have to give it to Mr. O'Toole. Anyway, and you are to stay here and take care of Johnny, my kitten.
That's swell. Now you run along.
So Elsie leaves and Robbo sits up again against the wall because his side feels easier this way. And Johnny One Eye is in his lap, purring very low, and the dark comes on until it is blacker inside the room than in the middle of a tunnel. And Robbo feels that he is going into another stupor, and he has a tough time fighting it off. Afterwards, some of the neighbours claim they remember hearing a shot inside the house, and then two more in quick succession. And then all is quiet until a little later, when Officer O'Toole and half a dozen other cops and an ambulance with the doctor comes busting into the street and swarm into the joint with their guns out and their flashlights going. The first thing they find is Butsy at the foot of the stairs with two bullet wounds close together in his throat, and naturally, he is real dead. Robbo is still sitting against the wall with what seems to be a small bundle of bloody fur in his lap, but which turns out to be what is left of this little cat I'm telling you about, although nobody pays any attention to it at first. They are more interested in getting their come-alongs on Robbo's wrists, but before they move him, he pulls his clothes aside and shows the doctor where the slug in his side, and the doctor takes one glom and shakes his head and says, "Gangrene," he says. "I think you have pneumonia too from the way you were blowing."
I know this morning. Not much chance, hey, Croker?
"Not much," the doctor says.
Well, cops, load me in. I do not suppose you want Johnny, seeing that he is dead.
"Johnny who?" one of the cops says.
Johnny One Eye. This little cat here in my lap. Butsy shoots Johnny's only good eye out and takes most of his noodle with it. I never see a more wonderful shot. Well, Johnny is better off, but I feel sorry about him as he is my best friend down to the last. I'm thinking the joke on Butsy. I am positive he'll still come looking for me all right, not only because of the little altercation between cute Freddy and me, but because the chances are Butsy is greatly embarrassed by not tilting me over the first time, as of course he never knows he wings me. Furthermore, and this is the best reason of all, Butsy will realise that if I am in this neighbourhood, and it is by no means a good sign for him, even if he hears I'm sick. Well, I figure that with any kind of a square rattle, I'll have a better chance of nailing him than he has of nailing me, but that even if he happens to nail me, O'Toole will get my note in time to arrive here and nab Butsy on the spot with his gun on him. And I know it will be a great pleasure to the DA to settle Butsy for having a gun on him. But as soon as I hear Butsy coming on the sneaksy by up the stairs, I can see I'm taking all the worst of it because I'm now wheezing like a busted valve, and you can hear me a block away except when I hold my breath, which is very difficult indeed, considering the way I'm already greatly tuckered out. No, it does not look any good for me as Butsy keeps coming up the stairs, as I can tell he is doing by a little faint creak on the boards now and then. I'm in no shape to manoeuvre around the room, and pretty soon he will be on the landing, and then all he will have to do is to wait there until he hears me, which he is bound to do unless I stop breathing altogether, naturally. I do not care to risk a blast in the dark without knowing where he is, as something tells me Butsy is not a guy you can miss in safety. Well, I noticed several times before this that in the dark Johnny One Eye's good glim shines like a big spark. So when I feel Butsy is about to hit the landing, although of course I cannot see him, I flip Johnny's ball of paper across the room to the wall, just opposite the door, and tough as he must be feeling, Johnny chases after it. When he hears its light, I figure Butsy will hear Johnny playing with the paper and see his eyes shining and thinking it's me and take a pop at it, and then his gun flash will give me a crack at him. It all works out just like I hoped it, but I never give Butsy credit for being such a marksman as to be able to hit a cat's eye in the dark. If I knew this, maybe I'll never stick Johnny out in the front the way I do. It is a good thing I never gave Butsy a second shot. He's a lily, yeah. I can remember when I could use a guy like him.
Butsy is no account. He is a good riddance. He is the makings of a worse guy than you.
Well, there's a good lesson to him for kicking a little cat.
Then they take Robo to hospital, and this is where I see him and piece out this story of Johnny One Eye. And Officer O'Toole is at Robo's bedside, keeping guard over him. And I remember that not long before Robo chalks out, he looks at O'Toole and says to him like this,
"Copper, there is no chance of them out-juggling the kid on the reward moo, is there?"
"No," O'Toole says. "No chance. I keep the note you send me by Elsie saying she will tell me where you are. It is information leading to your capture, just as the reward offer states, Robbo. It is a nice thing you do for Elsie and her mother, although it is not nearly as nice as icing Butsy for them."
By the way, Copper, there is the remainders of £1 note in my pants pocket when I am brought here. I want you to do me a favour. Get it from the desk and buy Elsie another cat and name it Johnny, will you?
"Sure. Anything else?"
Yeah. Be sure it has 2 good odds.